You bring up a great point. I think the only intrigue for me on this fight, aside from the co-main event and the main event, there's a couple newcomers on this card. We've got Louis Smolka returning to the UFC, which is interesting, fighting at bantamweight. You've got Martin Day, who got signed to the UFC, teammate of Max Holloway. So I'm interested to see his debut there. He also fought in Contender Series. You got Vince Morales on this card at 135. Vince Morales is actually Ricky Simone's cousin.
Wow.
And he's fought a lot on the regional scene and really sort of carved his way on, and he's also a newcomer here as well. Alex Morono looking to bounce back. I'm sort of looking at the American fighters, on here as far as, some interest. Rashad Coulter fighting on this card. Now, he didn't think he was going to get another fight in the UFC. He gets one, and he's actually fighting at 205 pounds on this card, so that's interesting. Jessica Aguilar's on this card. Kind of forgot that she was, fighting on this card as well. And of course, the one I'm really excited for, Kevin Holland, after that interesting debut against Thiago Santos, he finally gets a full camp and he's taking on John Phillips in what I think could be fight of the night. So those are sort of the only interesting things, but there's a lot of other fights on here that, fighters that, we've got a fighter on here that's got a 3-1 record. Didn't Dana say, like, if you want to be on Contender Series, you need at least, like, what is it, 5 fights or something like that? So it's kind of interesting. But
although his Bellator run has not been that great, you had Gerald Harris begging for a shot.
That's
he
right.
Get on Contender Series. Chris Curtis couldn't get signed off Contender Series.
Yeah,
like it's amazing the way this works. You spoke to Alex Morono, who's facing Keenan Song, who, boy, you want to talk about an odd trajectory to come into the UFC off of 2 straight losses and then win your first 2 fights in the UFC. You almost never see that. That's an interesting one. Syuri Kondo is one, if you're a pro wrestling fan, and I mean a real hardcore pro wrestling fan, that's one that you may know. She has a storied history in professional wrestling and CMLL. And, maybe I just didn't pay that much attention until Polyana Botelho knocked her out in 30 seconds. They didn't really have time to. Can't believe they didn't play that up, considering the pro wrestling connection there. And if she wins this fight, I would definitely do that. The crossover has never been more powerful. You have Jessica Aguilar, who finally got her first UFC win. I'm happy to see that. Li Jingyang, who, man, like 5 out of 6 he's won. So at least there's some quality there. Joe, before we talk about the main event and co-main event, is there anything on this prelim show that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, it's the only name, not the only name, it's the one I thought James was going to just hit a home run with is Li Jingyang. I love this guy. The way this guy fights. He's funny too. Like, he's just one of those guys. And he's powerful at 170 pounds. He hits like a truck and uses his jaw, like, just here, punch me here and watch what happens when I punch you back. I just think he's a fun fighter to watch. I don't know, guys, what his trajectory is going to be up the rankings, but eventually, the only thing is I mean, haven't all of his fights been overseas? Has he competed in Vegas at all? Let me just check here. Yeah, everything. Denver. He competed in Denver and he competed in Vegas. Okay. Philippines, Canada, Japan, China, Australia, Singapore. Right? Like, he's a guy that is that what they're doing? They're they're trying to, suck the name out of the leech here. Like, what's going on over here? I like this guy. I think he's fun. I think he's he can make some havoc here, but he's not fighting these guys potentially that are going to get him up the ranks. It's almost like he's got that filler sort of position whenever they go overseas or stuff like that, or just throw him around the world pretty much. But he has a victory with Frank Camacho, Zakatao. Lost to Jake Matthews, but listen, that went to the decision. So I'm looking forward to his fight for sure, guys.
I got 5 on it is in fact Syuri Kondo. I think she's a plus 320, and you just never know at that level of MMA. A fighter that hardly anybody that watches this show will know about is Sergey Pavlovich, but he is actually favored over Alistair Overeem, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. There is one day we will get a Sergey Pavlovich versus Francis Ngannou fight, and I think they might have to build a bigger cage. I don't know if these guys are both Adonises, but Pavlovich comes in without a whole lot of fanfare. In China, he's a guy that's 12, and I think it's 11-0 or 12-0. Has some good wins, but he's facing an Alistair Overeem who can put anybody out with one shot. Has a very underrated ground game too. James, what are you looking for out of this co-main event fight?
I mean, this looks to me like they're trying to build up Pavlovich here with the fact that he's fighting Overeem in the co-main event. You know, I haven't seen a ton of tape on this guy. I know that he did get a win over Baby Fedor, who fought last week for Bellator. So, I mean, that's a pretty good win in my opinion. But I mean, obviously the UFC, a much different animal in terms of quality of opponents. I think this is kind of one of those changing of the guards. I mean, if Overeem can get the win here, he'll be relevant. I mean, he takes out a top guy who's undefeated at 12-0. But Overeem needs to win. I mean, as much as Overeem is dangerous, he's been knocked out a bunch of times. I think he's actually the only heavyweight on the roster right now that has the most knockout losses in the UFC. So that's a bit concerning. Interesting tidbit, which if you guys had watched my interview with Curtis Blaydes, Overeem training with Blaydes, former opponent right now. So Overeem is in Denver. I like the fact that he's getting the elevation training. He's getting to train with Curtis Blaydes and Dontel Mays and some of the other bodies over there at Team Elevation or Elevation Fight Team. So that could help him here because he was at Jackson's before. I think maybe he was getting a little bit stagnant over there. So we'll see. Has he made the adjustments enough to take out a guy in Pavlovich? We'll see. But yeah, I think there might be some value here on Overeem as the underdog in this fight, just with the fact that, you know, he's got more experience clearly than Pavlovich, who's only got 12 fights.
Joe, Overeem, one of the most storied and sometimes frustrating fighters in MMA history. What do you think's going down here?
I got 5 on him. That's for sure.
Yeah, fair.
I just think that, you know, why not? He's a plus 100. It's even money, right? And, you know, what's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, Sergey's a bad man. He's 12-0, but, you know, I kind of on the same side as James that, you know, when he defeated Baby Fedor, but that was last year, right? Like that was November 19th, 2017, guys. Like that was, a year ago and at a day. So this guy hasn't competed in over a year. Ripped, fit, you know, Drago-looking dude that, you know, could give Alistair Overeem fits, but at the same time, this is Alistair Overeem, right? So I'm not there just yet, guys, and you guys can help me with this, but I'm not there just yet with Alexander Overeem sort of flip a coin. You never know which one's going to show up, or, you know, despite what happened with that Ngannou knockout, you know, Overeem still has what it takes. And I think if he's patient, could emerge victorious here, especially that James mentioned the elevation training. You know, he's just got to be smart, and he's a very experienced fighter. We know that. What's he got, 60 fights now? Like, it's ridiculous. So I'll put 5 on Overeem, in my opinion. Will I be surprised if Pavlovich wins? No. But looking at the odds, guys, I got 5 on Alistair.
Then it's main event time. Francis Ngannou, Curtis Blaydes. I love the idea of running this back. They look at this and they say, what's the worst that could happen? Ngannou, a guy that we pushed real hard, can win, or Curtis Blaydes can avenge one of his losses and get back on the right track. Personally, I have Curtis Blaydes taking this one after we have seen the blueprint on how to beat Francis Ngannou. Blaydes is a guy that you talk to a lot, James, and I always rave about this guy. He's so soft-spoken, and like, it's just if he had Derek Lewis's charisma, I think that it would just be like a different level. But he's a very soft-spoken, nice guy, but also very outspoken on social media. Doesn't hesitate to say, I would beat Brock Lesnar in short order. I think he's getting it done here, but I want to know what you think. You get to talk to him an awful lot.
Yeah, I like Blaydes in this matchup as well. And I think the big thing you have to look at is just the fact that when he fought Ngannou the first time, he wasn't training in Denver. So he wasn't getting the quality. He was basically training back home in Illinois. So he wasn't getting the type of training he is getting in Denver, where he has the elevation, where he has the, you know, really good training partners, good coaching, good strength and conditioning. So he's getting all that now. And we've seen that. I mean, you know, here's the thing. I mean, Ngannou could knock out anyone in the heavyweight division. That's true. He knocked out Curtis when they fought the first time. But Blaydes has really improved, you know, his striking defense. I mean, Mark Hunt cracked him, and Blaydes was still able to persevere in that fight. And I think he could do the same thing here against Ngannou. The thing I like about Blaydes is that he's just very athletic, very mobile, really good wrestling. I mean, we've seen the improvements in his wrestling in that fight. And I think that's going to be the difference. I mean, as powerful as Ngannou is, he's not that mobile of a heavyweight as some of the other guys he's fought. And we saw that in the fight against Stipe Miocic, where, you know, Miocic was able to sort of, you know, maneuver around him a little bit. And I think Blaydes is a little bit faster than him. Yeah, I like Blaydes here. I think he probably wins the decision. Ngannou, very tough to finish. I think that he'll just play it smart. And you know, there's a lot at stake here for Curtis, because realistically, he should have got the next title shot. You know, he was at UFC 226 when, you know, Stipe and Cormier fought. And I think the idea was, that he was going to fight Stipe for the belt, assuming Stipe won. That doesn't happen. Brock Lesnar crashes the party. So this is a guy who, I'm sure if there was any other fight, and actually he talked to me about this, I should mention this, that I think the only fight he'd take outside of an Ngannou rematch was a fight with Stipe. He doesn't want to fight anyone else. He's not interested in Volkov. He's not interested in anyone else. And I don't blame him, because realistically, let's forget about the Milstead fight, because, it was I think a no contest because of marijuana metabolics. He's basically been undefeated since the Ngannou loss. I think he takes it here by decision.
Joe, your thoughts? I'm a big fan of Blaydes' work. I am a proponent and advocate of wrestling. I really love how he implements it, and for his body, he's deceptively big as well. You don't understand how big a Blaydes is, but man, people just can't get out from underneath him.
Well, yeah. I'm just trying to run this through my head in terms of which Ngannou's going to show up, right? Has it completely just changed based on the last two fights, right? Like, is that it? We see him peak, we're done, right? So now it's a matter of, he completely underestimated Stipe Miocic, which is, borderline asinine. Then comes up against Derek Lewis with I don't know, like, what was that, right? Like, that was just crazy. So have you learned your lesson, right? That's the question. Have you learned your lesson and realized, hey, you know what? You better start taking this seriously, because you were on top of the world. You were pegged to be the baddest man on the planet at one point. Your life would have changed dramatically, although it has, considering where he's come from. Now you got a rematch versus Curtis Blaydes, who is one victory away from that title shot. I cannot see him not getting a title shot without defeating Francis Ngannou, unless, guys, it's an extremely boring fight. Can't really see it being a boring fight. Anything can happen, but I can't see this one being a boring fight. I think Blaydes gets the finish here. I think he gets a finish here. I think he gets a TKO or a submission. And I don't know what's going to happen with Ngannou after this, but who knows, guys? Maybe Ngannou does show up and is that monster that we saw leading up to the Stipe Miocic fight and puts Blaydes away. I don't think it's going to happen. And at minus 225, it seems the public also believes that Curtis Blaydes. Actually, let me just check that line here real quick, because I don't know how much it's moved. Oh, it's dropped. It was originally plus 115 for Curtis Blaydes. That sucker dropped to minus 225. So the public is really putting money on him. So